Hello everyone, this is your friend Naruto Nexus 2.0 and we are back with a new fanfic. Which is What If Naruto Was Chosen by Kushina Uzumaki and the Queens of Konoha, Part 1. And if you enjoy this fanfic then please press the like button and subscribe to my channel for more fanfic like this in common fo next part. And now let's start the fanfic. Patience is not sitting and waiting. It is foreseeing. It is looking at the thorn and seeing the rose, looking at the night and seeing the day. Toying with his brand spanking new hit I 8, a grin was dancing across the face of an 18-year-old Naruto Uzumaki. He had blazed through the ranks of Genin and Chunin, he was now officially a Junin. Men and women alike in Konoha's ninja force all have some sort of goal or aspiration. Some want to protect their family, some wish to strike fear in the hearts of the enemy, some simply want to serve the Hokage. However, he couldn't care less about being a shinobi. The only reason why he entered the profession was to indulge in life's greatest sins: drinking, killing, fornicating. Ramming his down a woman's throat at the age of 13 may seem unsettling for civilians, but no one bats an eyelash when a ninja, no matter how young, does it. But yes, his greatest sin was not with just anyone, mind you. He became a genin so he could bed his best friend's mother. They say a beautiful woman delights the eye, a wise woman, the understanding, a pure one, the soul. This saying didn't extend to breathtakingly gorgeous MILFs like Makoto Uchiha. Her luscious black hair was always styled, no matter when the blonde saw her. Her laughter was hypnotic, her smile was contagious, she was the epitome of feminine grace. The weapons of mass destruction on her chest could bring any sane man to their knees. Oh, how ripe and juicy they were, always lovely to shake them and bounce them in his hands, but the wondrous tits always jiggled and made hypnotizing movements that made him want to just stare at them for hours. Take those ripe S in his fingers, tease them or then use his teeth to chew on them like a pacifier. Sasuke had missed out on some delicious milk, but Naruto had no intention of missing out. Those rosy pink S were always delightful to feast on, especially since she had gone through a medical procedure to produce milk again. Oh, how he loved milking her. Makoto also had a sensational pair of full hips that supported Anwick could trigger an instant erection. Even when he was a child he would stare long and hard at his mother's glorious. This was the same case for his godmother as well. It was the highlight of his day to see her hips swaying side to side, her fat bouncing. For as long as he could remember he was driven by women's backsides, especially of mature women. Due to this early driving force, he's been worshipping Fugaku's wife's bottom for the past 5 years. In between the crevice, his tongue slathering saliva all over her perineum. 2 beautiful pink folds guarded the tunnel leading to her womb. Makoto's wasn't the first he's had the pleasure of feasting upon. With Jiraiya hounding on him and forcing him to expand his UAL knowledge base, he's been in between the legs of countless prostitutes. However, he never grew attached to those women. The only 2 women in his sight were Makoto and his mother. So when he was finally up and personal with Makoto's cunt, he gave it everything he possibly had. Sasuke's mother never even stood a chance against him. Let's not even talk about how much time he spent exploring her cute little. The seduction began when he was 12 years old. He wanted his mother. Ever since he was a child he found himself angry at his father for being able to win over a woman like Kushina Uzumaki. He had a perfect memory and could still recall memories of him and his mother bathing. She would always allow him to her tits in the bath when he was getting a little grumpy, which was why he was so drawn to tits in the first place. However, his mother's was definitely something he could spend his life savings on. The redhead's hips were nice and plump, packed with doughy flesh which jiggled with each step she took. Cruising through the ninja academy was for the sake of one day gaining enough skills to take his father's place in the bedroom. Thanks to Jiraiya being his godfather, he had become incredibly acquainted with the female anatomy. Of course Jiraiya knew of his dream. It took only a heartfelt confession for the old fart to help him in whatever way he could. Jiraiya may have been Minato's teacher, but he was a super pervert. Make Out Paradise. Blonde on Red Incest was going to be the #1 selling book in the Elemental Nations. So while he did feel guilty of possibly ruining his student's marriage, he knew there was no stopping the power of incestuous romance. After thorough analysis, Jiraiya realized that Minato was just a tool whose purpose was to help raise his wife's future lover. To help his newest apprentice win over Kushina, he first had the Gaki earn the affections of his godmother. To his delight, Naruto was attracted to the Uchiha matriarch and would always spend time with her over the weekends. However, this was going to be tricky because Makoto was married to Fugaku, though no one particularly liked the clan head. After sending him to various prostitutes and whores, he received pages of positive feedback from them regarding Naruto's oral skills. Then, one day he camped outside the Uchiha compound master bedroom's window. He found Naruto between Makoto's legs. By Kami the Gaki was eating the poor woman's like it was the cure to cancer. That night was the birth of Make Out Paradise, Housewife's oral service. Fugaku learned of this a month later and was relatively fine with being cuckolded. He wasn't a UAL person and only bothered with coitus to sire heirs. However, he was incredibly turned on by the sight of his wife getting pounded by his former teammate's son. He wasn't ashamed to say he masturbated several times to them like rabbits in heat. He wasn't ashamed to move out of the master bedroom. He wasn't ashamed to permanently hand over his wife to a 13-year-old teenager. Makoto was never his to begin with, he knew that now. Jiraiya also learned another thing about Naruto, that the Gaki had one gigantic. Measured at little over a foot long, 14.5 inches, the humongous shaft was thicker than the average kunoichi's wrist. If he was being honest with himself, the super pervert was concerned for his previous student's wife. Kushina was an extremely powerful kunoichi, but would she be able to handle Naruto's monster? From what Naruto had told him, it took Makoto a full week to learn how to take every inch of him inside her. It was difficult stomaching the fact he was 3 times smaller than the kid. Then again, this was a blessing in disguise. If he could come up with some bullshit prophecy to ensure Minato stays away from home, it would create a drift between Minato and Kushina. Through this, the redhead could depend on Naruto for being the head of the household. He trusted the youngster to be able to his mother from there. Project Uzumaki chest was a go. XXX. 2-san. Ah, good. You're here, Itachi, said Fugaku in a dull voice. Where's Sasuke? He left after breakfast, answered Itachi. By the way, have you finished signing our police training school documents? Fugaku gritted his teeth as he got out of his chair. Damn it, I forgot all about that. Come Itachi, let's finalize the paperwork right now. We have to get your mother's signature as well. Seeing no reason to disobey his father, Itachi followed the man out the study. As they entered the living room, they came across their matriarch, who was sitting on the sofa, engaging Naruto Uzumaki in a dance of the tongue. This was an all too familiar sight for the men in the Uchiha family. Ever since Naruto cuckolded their father 5 years ago, it was common for Sasuke and Itachi to walk in on their mother fooling around with the blonde, but with clothes on. They were alarmed when they first saw the two making out. Never in their wildest dreams had they imagined their sweet mother would cheat on their father. And when their father later confronted them, they were knocked for 6 to hear him say that this was how things were going to be from now on. But at the end of the day, at least their parents weren't getting divorced. Thankfully, they never caught the adulterous couple having since those two normally knocked boots in the privacy of the master bedroom. When Naruto and Makoto wanted to in the kitchen, living room, or in other areas of their humble abode, the two Uchiha heirs would be informed to take their leave. This time was different because his mother was fully and so was her lover. Their lips were molding together as they swapped saliva, kissing passionately. The woman's hands were full of the blonde's thick, throbbing manhood, whereas the blonde was kneading the former kunoichi's gorgeous bubble butt. Itachi groaned in discomfort before looking the other way when his mother suddenly plunged her head on the blonde's lap. Those two were so loud in bed, Naruto not so much, but by Kami was his mother a screamer, that it was difficult for him to want to stay in the house as they ed the shit out of each other. For some reason, now that those two were being intimate out in the open, he was rooted in place like his body was refusing to budge. Itachi stood with stony eyes as he watched that humongous rod of meat, which could easily be passed off as a katana, getting serviced by his mother. Two of Makoto's fingertips grazed the tip of Naruto's before tracing its underside. The fingers from both her hands curled around the shaft as she affectionately peppered the big, fat mushroom head with kisses. Her hot, wet tongue idly smoothed the tip before welcoming him into her oral caverns, simulating a suction cup as she tried drawing out some precum. She worked her way down his shaft, taking inch after twitching inch. Her flushed cheeks puffed out, which would have made her look adorable had it not been for the huge she was ing on. The Uchiha males finally saw the woman's face when Naruto created a makeshift hair tie by balling up several strands of her hair. The blonde's free hand was now grazing the top of the blacket's luscious. Her muffled S resounded like heavenly music as she bobbed her head up and down. Locking her index finger and thumb around the base to angle herself better, she relentlessly exercised her jaw to cram him deeper and deeper inside her gullet. A pop sound filled the living room when Makoto withdrew him from her mouth. She wasted no time in wrapping both hands around the monstrous shaft. She began pumping it with a passion, slow at first, then faster, but each motion showing off her expertise. The noise level escalated as she coated her palms with her saliva. Topping things off, she ducked her head and started ing on his huge balls, treating them both to a mouthwash. Itachi wanted desperately to leave, but he knew it was too late. His Sharingan sprang to life as he snuck a hand down his trousers, wishing for a woman to blow him like that. How was she able to take all of that in her mouth? Fugaku chuckled lightly to see his son squirming like a teenage girl. However, the youngster's arousal was relatable because he had a similar reaction when he first caught his wife and her lover going at it. Deciding to let his son jerk off in peace, he slowly made his way around the sofa, his small straining against his trousers. He couldn't tell for sure before, but now he could clearly see his wife's puckered rectum squinting and producing wet, squishy noises. Naruto wasn't holding anything back as he fingered her, loosening up the tiny orifice. A nice layer of cream was gathering around the woman's and began sticking to her inner thighs. The father of two scooted a few steps to the left and analyzed the rhythm at which his wife was servicing his master's ungodly large. He could still remember the time when she couldn't get half that beast in her mouth without gagging. Now her chin was leaning against Naruto's heavy ballsack, her nose pressing into his groin, 14.5 inches of meat buried deep within her oral cavity. As she pulled a second time, the blonde's length was flexing angrily, drenched in a frothy layer of spit, precum and thick ropes of throat lube. In the blink of an eye, his wife was straddling the blonde and was lowering herself on his manhood. "Oh, Itachi and Fugaku-san. I almost didn't see you two there," grunted out Naruto midway into stretching his whimpering godmother. Digging his hand in the crevice of her bottom, he jammed a finger up her. "What's going on? Did you need us for something?" Time stood still for Fugaku as his master gradually bottomed out inside his wife, clearly hitting her square in the cervix. She shook atop his lap, her slender arms snaked around his neck. Her hair fanned out as she nuzzled her face into his shoulder. Rendered speechless, he watched obsessively as she arched her body to adjust to the enormous length she was getting stabbed with. The sight of her rear wobbling in response to the initial warm-up thrusts was always mesmerizing for him. His Sharingan was now active, his breathing was coming in short bursts. The blonde possessively held on to his wife as he started nailing her. Rather than one finger, two were now examining her dirtiest hole. Makoto's screams were so tempting that it was giving him a painful erection. It was becoming unbearable for him to resist the urge to touch himself. The youngster was really giving it to his spouse. Dear Kami, Mai is on fire from watching Ka-san get ed by Naruto, thought Itachi, the heat engulfing his brain as sweat dribbled down his forehead. I can see why Tu-san has been such an avid fan. It's morally wrong for me to watch my mother engage in coitus, but I never thought could be so hot. He chewed on his bottom lip, studying how much that humongous shaft had stretched out his mother's. How in the world was she able to handle Naruto? She kept bouncing up and down on the blonde, her long hair hovering messily, ripples running through her big, fat. Suddenly, she pushed herself up until a handful of inches were sticking out of her. She proceeded to sway her hips, working whatever remained within her, before slamming herself back down. The sounds of her screams rang violently in the eardrums of her eldest son and husband. Goosebumps were seen rising on her cheeks before they ran down the back of her thighs. She sensually twerked atop the blonde's lap before picking up where she had left off. Itachi's eyes were wide as saucers as his mother confirmed that she was in a class of her own through her expertise at writing. He had never seen anything like it before in his life. Fugaku was a sputtering mess as his wife started creaming down his masters. Why, yes, I wish to speak with Makoto. When will you two be finished? I'm come MMMMMINNNNGGGGG. Squealed the Uchiha matriarch, her vaginal walls contracting so hard that her mind started malfunctioning. Even her eyes watered from the unbearable pressure. She shook on his lap like a trauma patient, her hands digging into his golden locks. Suddenly, the dam shattered, but not even the colossal volume of her release could put out the fire in her loins. Her big, juicy tits heaved up and down as she mewled like a contented kitten. She slowly relaxed before slumping against her lover with an adorable smile dancing across her lips. That's a good girl, cooed Naruto, holding the shivering woman in his arms. His monster was still buried inside her and was swimming in an abundance of fluids, which were starting to seep down the base of his shaft and traveling to his huge balls. We won't be free for another 3 hours, Fugaku-san. He held 2 fingers to his lips, and his eyes closed with bliss from the alluring taste of his godmother's anus. Coating the fingers with his saliva, he stuck them straight back up her delicious, today's the day I take Miko Heim's anal virginity. Fugaku's Sharingan flared as the blood rushed straight to his small. Swallowing the lump in his throat, he fell to his knees. It was less than a year ago when he first caught Naruto consuming his wife's. At first, he was revolted, and for good reason. There was nothing more unclean than the anus, but it was that very taboo which made it so hot. For 4 long years he's been waiting anxiously to see his wife's get stretched by her lovers. May I please watch, Naruto Dono? Pleaded the brown-haired clan head. Requesting this wasn't necessary since the couple always took his needs into consideration. However, as a devoted cuckold, he wanted to receive his master's confirmation. A foxy grin crept to the blonde's lips. Do you have a problem with this Miko Heim? Purred the black-haired goddess Aili, her melodious voice hypnotizing the audience. Of course not, Narukoi. I'll grant your request if you bring me some lubricant from the master bedroom, began the wife-stealer before scrunching up his face. It'll be a purple color bottle labeled anal-tastic. Itachi was silent as his father fled the scene like a thief in the night. He shifted uncomfortably as his mother's reproductive juices oozed out of her as she idly hopped off her lovers. That terrifyingly huge shaft was glistening proudly with her release, and to his surprise, it was still hard as steel. It was a different story when his father was present with him. He couldn't describe how awkward he was feeling right now. Don't worry, Sochi, said Makoto, sensing her son's troubled mind. This is a safe place. Nodding timidly, the powerful Anbu softly thanked the woman for not belittling him. It was bad enough that he was gazing at his mother. However, it was like Pandora's box had been opened and he couldn't gather the strength to leave. He was brought out of his thoughts as his father appeared back with a bottle of lubricant in hand. Wait, commanded Naruto as he saw his lover's husband presenting the bottle to him. I am going to be worshipping Miko Heimsfirst. Go and quickly bring me a couple pair of pillows. Of course, Naruto Dono, said Fugaku before nudging his son. Come Itachi, let's be quick. Makoto arched a brow at her beloved. You spend an hour playing with my every day, Narukoi, whispered the mother. You know you can just skip the foreplay this time. Not a chance, answered the blonde as he picked his lover bridal style. He quickly set her down on the carpet, and on her hands and knees. You don't see what I see. You don't see the big, fat, beautiful all gracefully spread out before me. You don't see the full, delicious curves on full display for me. You don't see the beautiful flower petals that guard your, nor do you see the ripe dark pinkish hole that I'm going to feast upon on this gracious day. B. Baka, sputtered the MILF with a huge blush. Trust you to say such things about my it's kind of arousing really. It's easy to find things to say when they're all true, said the blonde before he saw the two men approaching him with pillows in hand. Perfect. Lay two pillows on top of each other. The father and son did as they were told. However, only Fugaku understood the silent instruction of setting a pillow for his wife's face to rest on. Makoto was now propped up on the pillows. Two pillows under her stomach, allowing her to prop her up and stay nice and comfy. It's time, breathed Fugaku. Watch carefully, Itachi. This is going to be the hottest thing you'll ever see in your life. Itachi nervously cleared his throat as the blonde knelt down and started caressing his mother's thick left cheek. Naruto's jaw contorted when he opened it as wide as possible to cover as much flesh as he could with his mouth. His lips sealed about the plump cheek. Now that his vision was blocked, he scooted over to see a clear view of the blonde's tongue lathering saliva over and across the glistening skin of his mom's buttocks. The young adult's hands were fanned out to rest atop the plump cheeks. Fugaku reveled in the sight of his wife's eyes rolling to the back of her head as Naruto's tongue slithered down to her matronly thigh. The blonde gently nipped on her flesh before kissing it again. He kicked off his pants and plopped on his knees, hungrily ogling them. He was about to start jacking off when he saw his youngest son entering the living room with a horrified expression. Deciding to end the verbal outrage before it could become a reality, he instantly appeared in front of his kid and covered his mouth with his hand. Don't dare say anything, Sasuke, hissed the father. Naruto Dono will not appreciate being interrupted, not to mention that I'll be furious for you ruining my viewing pleasure. Either get out or stay and watch. But, wait, Itachi, gasped the young Uchiha, why are you here? I thought you were against Two-san's desires to watch the Dobi and Ka-san. The Dobi may seem like an insult to some, but in reality, this was an endearment. This was just a nickname that Sasuke had given his best friend. He had nothing against Naruto and his mother. As long as the two weren't putting on public shows, then he had no problem with their relationship. His father had no problem with it, so why should he? Foolish little brother, whispered the older teen. I was wrong about insulting Two-san's desires. Just watch and you'll start seeing things from our point of view. Sasuke was a little peeved that his brother and father were both from the waist down, not to mention the fact his brother was finally coming around to their father's bizarre desire to watch Naruto and Makoto have. Ultimately, he propped down to see Naruto's palms finding the full swell of the spheres of his mother's derriere. He quickly threw his hands over his face, ashamed that he was seeing so much of his kind-hearted parent. The sounds of tantric-ing made him slowly drop his hands to see Jiraiya's prized student biting into the soft flesh of his married partner's butt cheek. His breathing was heavy as that thick, veiny rod of meat came into view. It terrified him and his classmates back in the academy when Naruto dropped his trousers during a visit to the hot springs. That thing was huge then, but it was monstrous now. From where he stood, the rays of the sun entering the living room from the window were bouncing off his mom's broad. Yearning to get a better view, he stepped to his right to see her bottom getting spread, revealing her anus, which glistening with runoff juices and saliva. His onyx orbs widened, his heart skipping a beat. Did the dobe just his mother's? Sasuke didn't have to wait long for his answer as Naruto pressed his lips against Makoto's winking rectum, making open-mouthed smooching motions, effectively massaging the area around her button. Then, the blonde plummeted his face between his lover's thighs and she started bucking her hips back and forth, panting and mewling. It was obvious that the Dobie was slobbering all over his mother's pink star. Dear Kami. Thanks to his dojutsu, Itachi could see that the ring of his mother's anus was raising slightly, being drawn into her lover's mouth. At first her toes curled as he'd ed her outer rim. Then her legs started to shake as a miniature orgasm rippled out of her. Naruto's tongue was now emerging to lather the inner walls of her sweet, feminine S turned to growls and she brought one hand to the back of the blonde's head. Perhaps this was her way of guiding his movements, but he soon realized that this wasn't the case. The blonde didn't pick up the pace, yet his mother's voice jumped several decibel levels. Upon further analysis via Sharingan, he could tell Naruto's tongue was slithering quite deep inside her rectum. The sensations this was bringing her must be overwhelming if she was forced to withdraw her hand from the blonde's head. True enough, she clenched her hands into tight fists and buried her face into the pillow. Her was clenching around his tongue, her muffled cries occupying the area. She started slamming her fists on the carpet, mirroring the rhythm of the blonde's tongue swabbing. The kid he used to babysit was now transforming into a reckless beast whose purpose was to feast upon his mother's. What the? This is so hot! Roared Sasuke inwardly, fidgeting with a burning erection. Dobie, hell, you're really eating out Ka-sans. Fugaku smiled as he paid a glance at his sons, though it may have seemed creepy with him jerking off his while doing so. Turning his attention back to the couple of the hour, he could tell that his wife was just about ready to explode based off the all-too-familiar sight of her spasming legs. On top of that, her entire body was flushed, her hair was swaying from side to side as she shook her face violently into her pillow. His master kept working his tongue, consuming the jelly of his wife's anal canal. Come in Gigi, shrieked Lady Uchiha, her gushing like it was trying to beat its previous record. The sheer pressure of her release made stars appear in her field of vision. She quickly bit into her pillow as her world came crashing down on her. The strength in her legs left her as her knees gave in and she collapsed soundly on the very carpet she had just soaked. So powerful was her anal-induced orgasm that she promptly blacked out. The three Uchiha males glanced down at the ropes of sperm they had shot on the floor. The sight of his wife getting ally pampered always delighted Fugaku. However, for Itachi and Sasuke, this first-time voyeuristic experience was like a drug and they were quickly becoming addicted. No wonder why their father has been hooked for so long. Fugaku-san, announced Naruto. You may hand me that lubricant now. His eyes widened slightly before his lips curled into a smile. Hey, Tem, I didn't know you were here as well. That's probably because you were occupied elsewhere, Dobie, joked the youngest Uchiha, not wanting to mention that he had just jizzed on the carpet. Hope you don't mind me sticking around. Not at all, was all the huge-eyed man before picking his best friend's mother up and bringing her back to the sofa where they were previously making love. Sitting her across his lap, he ruffled up her hair while gesturing for the woman's husband to present him with the lubricant. Makoto awoke with a gasp and went about catching her breath. Focusing her fluttering eyes, she saw that she was laying on her lover's lap and that his monster was jutting up proudly towards the ceiling. She affectionately nuzzled her cheek against the base of his shaft, kissing it, cherishing it. For the longest time she's been terrified for the safety of her because that thing would definitely tear her apart and may damage her internal organs. It took a few years, but now she was finally ready to lose her anal virginity. She cooed sweetly as the blonde leaned down and pecked the top of her head. She responded by leaning up and showering his face with kisses. The intimate display brought a smile to Fugaku's face. As a cuckold husband, it elated him that he had a master who cared so deeply about his wife. Judging by the reactions of his children, he could tell they also agreed those two were a perfect match. He was pulled from his thoughts when he saw his master holding out his hand, waiting for him to pour the butt-friendly oil. Once his hand was nice and wet, Naruto ran it along his godmother's crotch before taking her erect in between two fingers. He tugged on it, earning a full-body jerk from her since her nether region was painfully sore from her recent orgasms. She started kicking her feet into the air as he relentlessly teased the nub, refusing to stop even when she began crying out for mercy. The Uchiha men held in their breaths, intoxicated by the wise sight of the blonde dominating their matriarch. Now the man was circling the outer rim of his godmother's anus. Then, he shoved his finger inside her. The immense warmth of her walls consumed his digit, the tightness collapsing around it. She edged dreamily as he worked her anal muscles. The rimming did a decent job of warming up that cute little and the oral stimulation helped as well. He soon stuffed a second finger within her, loosening her up further, and began thrusting them in and out with the thick lubricant greasing up her back door. He then flipped her over, laying her on his lap in the standard position for a spanking. However, he didn't set her like this to spank her, this was for a totally different purpose. She stretched her legs before bringing her hands to her derriere, prying it open for her son's best friend. Grabbing the lubricant from his lover's husband, he aligned the head of the bottle with Makoto's cute little. He used 2 fingers to open up her rosebud. Tilting the bottle slightly, he allowed the oil to flow directly inside the mother's dirty hole. Wow, amazing, mumbled Fugaku as Naruto filled his wife's with oil. This is so hot. Why yeah, agreed Itachi, stroking his. Was all Sasuke could groan out as he palmed his testicles. The oil soon overflowed and started oozing out of Makoto's sphincter. Naruto smoothly flipped the woman over again, this time Sashi was laying back first on his lap. He quickly pushed her legs up while shoving his thumb up her to prevent more lubricant from leaking out. Lowering his head, he started kissing a path through the valley of her magnificent tits, stopping occasionally to kiss a patch of skin, first below her cleavage then further down her belly. She giggled melodically as he motorboated her s. Sasuke and Itachi were both spellbound as the muscular man who was cuckolding their father ed their mother's s like they used to back when they were infants. A pop sound filled the living room when Naruto finally stopped chewing on his best friend's mother's erect s. Smirking down at her and receiving her seductive smile in return, he extended his hand and presented the oil bottle to Fugaku. The man was quick to his feet and eagerly kept his hands wrapped around the bottle. When the blonde held out his hand again, he poured the lubricant onto it. Once that was done, Naruto began lathering up his, getting it nice and wet for the tiny orifice he was soon going to claim as his forever. Fugaku nudged his youngest son, bringing him out of his dazed state. Their matriarch was once again straddling Naruto's lap in the cowgirl position and was seconds away from losing her anal cherry. The treasures located between Makoto's bottom were revealed as the blonde pulled her butt cheeks apart. Little by little, the woman's cute little puckered up as it met the violent head. All 3 Uchiha males held in their breaths as they anticipated the amazing spectacle. The goal of life is to make one's heartbeat match the beat of the universe, to match one's nature with nature. Sasuke's heart, on the other hand, was racing faster than a speeding bullet. This was the first time he was witnessing a man attempting to tear through a woman's, after all. He cringed as the puckered folds parted like the Red Sea. Judging by the sound of her broken whimpers, his mother was in considerable pain and it was difficult stomaching it. Turning his head, he saw his brother biting his lips, but his father was openly drooling. By the time he snapped his attention back to the couple, the blonde's massive head was buried in his lover's hot sphincter. Kaami-sama, squealed Makoto as tears ran down her gorgeous face. You're breaking me, Narukoi. You're breaking my ass. Naruto clawed at the widest chunk of his godmother's hips, resisting the urge to ejaculate inside her extremely small hole. She wasn't lying when she said he was breaking her because he was doing a damn good job of splitting her in two. Then again, A cavity search wasn't meant to be performed with something of such length and girth. However, he would be damned if he didn't explore every hole of his best friend's mother. Her anal walls gradually loosened as she relaxed herself while resting her head over his shoulder. Exhaling deeply, he shoved 2 more inches within her, making her squirt a whole 50 milliliters of juice in the process. Itachi had summoned a shadow clone who was holding up a wide mirror at the back of the sofa so he, his father and his younger brother could see their mother's face while getting stuffed with Naruto's. Makoto's mouth opened wider and wider with each inch being shoved up her rectum. Her eyes were sealed shut, tears straining her face with her brows crinkling in pain and pleasure. Strands of long, sweaty black tresses were matted to her cheeks. A light blue hue started surrounding her as her chakra began flaring erratically. Blood red was the color of her eyes as she finally opened them as her Sharingan force activated. Aj, slow, begged Makoto, her butthole starting to gape from the extreme stretching. Please go slow. Oh, I finally have it, cooed Naruto, his cerulean blue orbs glossed with lust. I finally have your Miko Heim. Gritted out the black-haired MILF, only for a glob of salvia to shoot out of her mouth as she got anally probed by an extra 2 inches of hard. I don't think you'll be able to fit, Narukoi. You're too big. You're destroying me. His wife used to be a virgin back there, but she gave it up to the man she's cheating on him with. The last time he saw her in so much pain was 18 years ago, when she was giving birth to Sasuke. Though he could understand why she was struggling so much, seeing her tiny button was getting drilled by 14.5 inches of solid steel. Of course, the sight of her thrashing around did alarm the husband in him. However, Fugaku wasn't feeling sick to his stomach because unimaginable lust was coursing through his veins. Sweat was trickling down his forehead as his wife's opened further for his master's gigantic tool. The tomos of his Sharingan spun uncontrollably. He was foaming at the mouth. Even his was drooling. He fell to his knees, panting heavily. As he weakly attempted to rise to his feet, he saw both his sons gazing at him in concern. Uchiha men show egomaniacal personalities to outsiders to prevent them from finding out that we're genetically programmed as submissive, announced Fugaku, deciding now was the time to reveal his clan's darkest secret to his children. Don't feel bad if you haven't had any luck with women, Sasuke. It's just how we are. Thankfully we can still find pleasure from watching our loved ones with dominant males. Don't you agree? Despite this news shocking him to the core, Sasuke realized why it brought him such immense pleasure to see his mother getting UAL with his best friend. It all made sense now. Wiping the sweat from his forehead, he started jerking off to his heart's content. Do it, Dobi. Take my Ka-sans. Fugaku smirked in approval before glancing over at his eldest son, who was also furiously stroking his. Itachi didn't verbally show it, but his actions spoke louder than words. The sight of his mother getting butt-ed was like a dream come true for him. Of course, the sight of her in so much pain was not easy for him to endure, but he couldn't deny the fact he had fantasized about having anal with a woman. To force her on her hands and knees, force her to spread her delicious cheeks, and then force her to take him up the however, he never found the courage to do something like that. He realized now that this was because of the submissive male Uchiha genes. The worst wasn't over for Makoto, for she had to endure another 10 minutes of painful stretching, 10 excruciating minutes. Little by little the blonde fed the woman his ungodly large. To see that huge, fat tower of meat play hide and seek with one of the most glorious asses ever created was like heaven on earth. The father and his 2 sons shared a quick glance to see they were all jacking off to the sight of their matriarch getting ed in the then. Makoto began grinding her hips, begging her lover to push deeper. Within the next 5 minutes Naruto was buried to the hilt, balls deep inside the mother's now fully stretched out rectum. Fugaku saw his wife's buxom cheeks kissing her lover's hot groin as the blonde clasped his hands about her dainty waist. It was clear that his wife's muscles were finally relaxing. She and his master were now writhing in a slow, steady rhythm, like they were exchanging rectal handshakes. Their foreheads were pressed together, their arms wrapped around one another, their eyes locked. The sight was more romantic than a candlelight dinner. Soon, the thrusts came with a vengeance as Naruto started hammering his wife's. The sounds of their bodies slapping together filled the living room of the Uchiha compound as a dirty, musky scent filled their nostrils. Deep. So cakening deep. Cried Makoto as she clawed at her lover's hair. Her was getting crushed as she kept bouncing up and down on him in frenzy, her hips attaining a darker and darker red hue each time she landed on his lap. Each thrust resulted in her thrashing about, her hair tossing from side to side like a crazed whore. Surprisingly, she found herself loving every second of him tunneling into the depths of her gorgeous bubble butt. She was no longer on Earth, she was now floating in a pleasurable abyss. Anal was amazing. Neither of the three male Uchiha realized how much time had passed until the living room started darkening. Fugaku quickly switched on all the spotlights before rushing back to his previous spot. The couple have been for over 4 hours now. Sasuke and Itachi were both rendered speechless at how long Naruto could last in bed. Naruto's true skill wasn't in battle, it was in hot, steamy. None of them could count the number of orgasms Makoto's had thus far from getting her drilled by her son's best friend. The entire main floor of the compound reeked with, but it was of no concern to anyone present. Suddenly, Naruto went through a demonic change. The thrusts became unforgiving, not suitable for a couple in love, but perfect for a pair of deviants looking for a heated. His hands gripped and pulled his godmother cheeks apart before he began the living shit out of her. Makoto's tears came back, straining her pretty face as she cried to the heavens. Her upper shoulders and chest started burning as a result of the supersonic motion of her heaving tits. Globs of saliva were shooting out of her mouth as she was rendered insensible. She dug her nails into the back of his shoulders, her brain cells scattering, her eyes losing all form of life. Itachi and Sasuke both resisted the urge to separate the two. It was like the blonde was trying to kill their angel of a mother with his Herculean. It was flabbergasting to witness her cycling through orgasms as she kept squirting, her juices continually splashing against her lover's chest and drenching the sofa they were on. Performing one final thrust, Naruto roared out his release. A gigantic burst of jism rocketed through his urethra and went spearing into her unready bowels. Makoto's jaw dropped down to anime levels and she began thrashing around, but her son's best friend refused to let her hop off his. Her eyes rolled to the back of her head as he filled her bottom to the brim with his highly potent seed. The sheer heat and power of his volcanic warmth filling her anal cavity was unbearable. Her grip around his neck loosened as she slumped forward, drifting unconscious. Itachi's knees buckled as his shadow clone dispelled, breaking the mirror he was holding up behind the sofa. He just had his biggest ejaculation to date, and it was all thanks to the vicious pounding his mother had endured by the whiskered blonde. Sasuke was kneeling on the floor, panting heavily to recuperate from his orgasm. Paying a quick glance at his father, he saw the man all jizzed out as well, not that he could blame them. This was an incredibly hot performance. Make out paradise. Breaking through the back door. The familiar voice of Jiraiya broke out from the shadows as the old fart emerged with a ridiculous amount of dark stains littering his crotch area. Everything that's happened thus far was being videotaped. Thank you for letting us watch you too. You've given me all the material I need to publish my next masterpiece. Naruto panted a little as he pulled out of his lover, allowing the group to see his sperm begin to ooze out of Makoto's gaping. The little folds remained pulled apart for quite some time before finally sealing shut. In his opinion, there was nothing more satisfying than ending things with a nice, sweet cream pie. You're welcome, sensei, said the blonde. Remember to send us an early copy. Hey Dobi, do you and Ka-san like that every day? Voiced Sasuke, unable to help himself. Of course he was aware that the couple were having regular for the past 5 years. Hell, he's heard them going at it more times than he could count. He just didn't think this level of hardcore existed. Not even Kami-sama could wipe away Naruto's devilish grin. This doesn't even come close to how rough Miko-chan and I get during the weekends. Are you serious? Queried Sasuke, swallowing the lump in his throat. He slowly turned towards his father, who was nodding along to the words being shared. His lips thinned as he stared back at his best friend. Shit, Dobi. No wonder why Tu-san refuses to come between you and Ka-san. But thanks for letting me watch. It was hot. Itachi cleared his throat, deciding to say his piece. I'd like to thank you as well. This was by far the most intense I've ever seen. I've always wanted to have anal with a woman, but just watching you and Ka-san was able to sat my fantasies. You always have my utmost gratitude, Naruto Dono, added Fugaku with a submissive bow of his head. Don't mention it. Naruto waved off the trio when his lover awoke with a thunderous gasp. Oh, sweet. Miko Himes waking up. Softly, the former kunoichi threw a blanket over her and her lover. This will be the last time you are allowed to see us have. With this, I've repaid my debt to Jiraiya-san for helping Naru-koi me and make me the happiest woman on the planet, began the woman calm, cool and collectedly. It's time for Naru-koi and I to live our lives in private. Please respect our wishes and don't come looking for a free show again. We'll discuss this in detail tomorrow morning, Fugaku. Itachi, Sasuke, I've allowed you both to watch us today to show you exactly how Naru-koi was able to me and cuckold your father. Now please leave us. Fugaku's eyes started to water, but he nodded nonetheless. In these past 5 years he's lived out practically all of his cuckold fantasies. It's been an absolute thrill watching his wife get drilled by his master every single night. She's never stopped him before, so he couldn't find it in his heart to deny her request. Pulling up his pants, he and his 2 sons made their way out the compound to give his wife and her lover some privacy. Jiraiya gave them a thumbs up before vanishing in a cloud of smoke. Naruto chuckled as he aligned his with his godmother's. Now where were we? Makoto squeaked like a little girl as she covered her with her hands, preventing her lover from sodomizing her again. Naru-koi, can you please let me rest for a bit? Shyly whispered the mother. I am still really sore back there. Even with all that careful planning, you had almost split me open with your. Unfortunately for Fugaku's wife, Naruto wasn't on the same page. Removing her hands, he flipped her over so she was laying on her chest. I've waited 5 years to take your Miko Hime. He pulled her butt cheeks apart, revealing the cute little hole he had just recently violated. But I promise I'll be gentle. If it hurts too much, I'll pull out and stick it in your instead. Okay. Biting her lips, the blushing woman nodded into the sofa. Oh okay. She pushed out her bubble butt, while using her hands to keep her cheeks spread for her lover to have clear access to her anus. I'm ready. Makoto Uchiha was sodomized in every room of the compound. XXX. Naruto sighed happily as he strolled through the streets of Konoha. Everyone who waved at him received warm smiles, earning a few blushes here and there from his female admirers. He had just exited the Uchiha compound after having with his godmother for 7 hours straight. He stirred from recalling how much pleasure he felt from taking her anal cherry. It took him a few years, but he finally claimed that sweet Uchiha since she was resting for the time being, he left a clone in his place to cuddle with her in the master bedroom. The reason why he's out and about was so he could take a quick trip to his home. It was almost 8 p.m. and every day at 8:15 p.m. his mother would hop in the shower. He's been watching her bathe herself for the past 2 years straight and he wasn't about to stop now. Closing the door behind him, he sneakily made his way upstairs and saw that the bathroom door was open. A few minutes later, his mother entered the bathroom with a towel in hand. She had absolutely no idea that she was being watched. Jiraiya's invisibility cloak was what saved his multiple times. That said, it was worthless when put up against a master censor such as Kushina Uzumaki. Fortunately for Naruto, he improved the technique by masking his presence and scent to prevent anyone, even his mother, from sensing or smelling him. Dotting his lips, he watched on as she undressed herself. The robe came off slowly, sliding off her shoulders and slithering down her body until it snaked around on the tiled floor. The straps of her robe grazed over her hips, making her doughy cheeks jiggle as she hung up her robe for when she was done showering. Naruto stealthily moved over to stare deeply at his mom's beautiful, huge tits which were capped by nice, cute rosy S. He slowly reached for his waistband as she got under the shower head and adjusted the water pressure. Her supple curves started glistening with star shine of water running rivulets around the sides of her S and between the round cheeks of her pillowy butt. The carpet matched the drapes. The pouch of her vagina occupied a neat patch of red hair and it excited him whenever she trimmed it in front of him. Of course, she wasn't aware he was peeping on her, but she didn't need to know that, for now at least. Her soapy hands were entangled in her long, thick, red tresses. Her eyes were screwed shut against intruding suds. Steam started fogging up the bathroom mirror as the water became hotter. Pouring a generous handful of foam soap into her palm, Kushina commenced to spread it liberally over her massive S. She groaned as she teased her ripe S with her forefinger and thumb. Her nubs were engorged by lust more than environment. Sparks shot at random through her chest. The warmth that was creeping in her loins was now transforming into an inferno, raging into her torso. Her inner thighs grew moist as her breathing became labored. She thought that having big, juicy tits would draw her husband's undivided attention. Sadly, he barely acknowledged her girls. It wasn't right to blame him for that. So he doesn't like S that much. Was she supposed to hold that over him forever? Absolutely not. That didn't stop her from fantasizing about his tongue darting across her before he covered her entire areola with his mouth. Unfortunately, her mind always broke apart such fantasies because her subconscious knew who the biggest fan of her tits was. It was her son. Naruto used to be a very hungry baby and would often overdose on her milk. Deciding to derail her train of uncomfortable thoughts here, she spun around, causing ripples to run through her big, luscious before the hail of hot water droplets began bouncing off the thick flesh. Bringing her hands on her hips, she pulled apart her cheeks, fully exposing her unexplored and pretty much a virgin. She had no idea that her son was greedily drinking in the sight. A sword through her mouth as the hot water began cruising through the crevice of her, greeting the entrances of both her holes. Turning around for a second time, the steamy drops rained down on her face. She had sacrificed her own needs to play housewife when her husband became Hokage. He was always out, cooped up in his office 24/7. Sometimes she felt like he didn't even care about her. But if she was asked to do it again, she would do it in a heartbeat. Forgiving Minato for being so absent from her life was easy because she had a darling little boy to coddle. To her shock and amazement, her baby blonde quickly grew into a man who she found herself depending on. It wasn't like she could ask him to her down. However, the thought of him doing so was oddly turning her on. She had seen him, not on purpose mind you. It started 2 weeks ago when she walked in on him while he was changing. His rock-hard body was enough to make her heart hammer a loud, frantic heartbeat. Not having for so many years will do that to any woman who has just seen a tight, fit adult male. However, the sight of her son's lower half made her cream her panties. That magnificent weapon he kept imprisoned within his trousers had her spellbound. Her husband was so much smaller than her son that comparing the two was like comparing a pebble to a mountain. They were in completely different leagues. Minato may have been Hokage. But Naruto was the one with a Hokage's tower. Even in terms of girth, her son was roughly 3 times thicker than Minato. That night was the first time she masturbated to the thought of getting ed by her son. She has had wet dreams about him ever since. Just thinking about getting split open by a of that size was making her head spin. How it would feel to get penetrated by him. Would it hurt as much as she thought? Or would her vagina be able to expand that much? Minato was easily able to pass through the pink folds of her. However, there was no way Naruto would be able to do the same unless he were to put her through excruciating pain. Even when Minato was balls deep inside her, it didn't do jack shit for her. Her husband was called the Yellow Flash and it was for good reason. He finished as quick as he could teleport. Honestly, she got more pleasure from fingering herself. But if her son was to go balls deep inside her, she would have to get vaginal reinforcement surgery because she was sure he would be hitting her right in the womb. Such deep. It sounded so amazing to her. Today started off as any other day, with her husband not present in their bed. She had gotten used to his absence and sadly it no longer bothered her. When she came downstairs to the kitchen, she saw her son whipping up some breakfast and she spent a few minutes admiring the man who was cooking for her. She still couldn't look him in the eyes without blushing a bright red. The mental image of his terrifyingly huge was still fresh on her mind. Slapping a hand on her crotch, she gently tugged on her lips. Oh, Sochi-kun. Naruto's eyes shot wide open, but not because his mother was toying with herself. She's been masturbating regularly every night in the shower, which was why he never missed the chance to peep on her. The reason why shock was practically littering his face was because she was mentioning his name while flicking the bean. 2 weeks ago, he decided to let her see him for the first time. By doing so, she would see exactly what she's been missing this entire time. The best part was that he could play this off as her accidentally walking in on him changing. This reaction of hers far surpassed what he had pictured in his head. He didn't expect for her to actually fantasize about him through just that one-time viewing experience. Not to say that he didn't understand why she was so conflicted. Wrapping both hands around his gigantic, he started stroking himself to match the rhythm of his mother fingering herself. Oh, I don't care anymore, whimpered Kushina, jamming a second finger up her cunt. Me with your monster, Sochi-kun. Me. Your Ka-chan like she's never been ed before. Ruin me for your father. Ruin me. She spasmed under the shower head. I'm comin' ing ggggg. Hot ing damn, exclaimed Naruto mentally, ropes upon ropes of jism shooting through his urethra and onto the tiled floor. The thick, rich cream smoothly ran with the hot water and got ed down the drain. His 14.5-inch beast pulsated with craving energy, but he knew it wasn't the right time to claim his prize yet. Dear Cammy, muttered the mother as she hurriedly cleaned her. That was the biggest orgasm I've ever had, but this is getting really bad, this is so wrong. Tears fell down her cheeks. This is all your fault, Minato. You for staying away from home so often. Because of you I've been fantasizing about our son ing the living shit out of me, Databane. She fell to her knees, her voice cracked and raw. I just want to be loved, sniffled the vulnerable wife. Just want to feel like a woman again. The plan was to his mother a day by day until the month was over before finally making his move on her. However, after hearing her spill her darkest secret made him throw caution to the wind. By the time he was done with her, she would not hesitate to have with him even if his father was watching them. Kushina was his, just like Makoto. Naruto didn't care if he was being selfish. It used to concern him that he would be cuckolding the Hokage and turning the man into a submissive. No, it wasn't the idea of getting in trouble that made him feel hesitate. He was just worried about hurting his father. There was no hatred in Naruto's heart for Minato. But if he was to choose between his parents, his mother would come out on top every single time. There was no easy way to inform a husband that his wife now belonged to a far superior man. However, he intended to make the Yellow Flash understand that through whatever means necessary. You are mine, Ka-chan, thought Naruto as he walked out the bathroom. Starting tomorrow morning, I'll show you the pleasure you've been missing out on. Mark my words, you will forget all about San by the time I'm done with you. The blonde mother lover was so close to his dream that he could taste it, and hopefully taste her. Wow, look at this spread! Exclaimed Makoto as she laid eyes on the sheer number of dishes on her dining room table. She awoke a few hours ago, had some hot, steamy, morning with Naruto, then made her way downstairs hand in hand with him, eager to taste the breakfast he was going to cook for her this morning. The couple did not expect to walk into the dining hall and see Jiraiya covering the oversized table with fully loaded plates of scrumptious-looking food. "Consider it a thank you for providing me all that material yesterday," said the long-haired old man. "The scenes in this upcoming Make-Out Paradise novel are going to be so graphic that every full-blooded male who reads them will pass out from blood loss. I can already picture Kakashi failing a mission because he was pitching a tent and the client was disturbed by it." Fugaku's wife and her lover couldn't help but chortle from imagining such a scenario because it was so believable. It was common for the Hitaki to lose himself while reading the Make-Out Paradise novels. Just a few years back, he unknowingly rammed a civilian from behind because his nose was buried in a new book. What made this situation comical was the fact the civilian was an old man, who actually found the intrusion flattering. Despite similar episodes, the man took great pride in his self-proclaimed role as Jiraiya's biggest fan. "I would also like to add that I'm also considering writing an anal guide book highlighting the struggles women go through while taking it up for the first time. This is all thanks to you too." "Well, this is all because Naruto did a number on me yesterday," shyly responded the mother, rubbing her sore butt. "I'm still numb from all those positions he took me in. Not even medical ninjutsu was able to help heal my soreness. What can I say? I finally got to indulge in one of my greatest fantasies, so of course I was going to urine every way imaginable, Miko Heim," said the blonde, a cheeky grin dancing across his lips. Leaning forward, he planted a sloppy kiss on the side of his blushing godmother's face. A river of blood was trickling down the perversely giggling Sanin. In all his years of writing books, traveling across the globe, and researching, what he saw yesterday outclassed everything he knew about anal. Makoto's virgin had put up an admirable fight as it tried desperately to fend off against its Herculean intruder, but it ultimately accepted its fate and was stretched to beyond its limits. So taboo, so hot, he thanked his lucky stars that he was given a front row seat to the live show. He smiled fondly at the muscular blonde, once again reminded why he agreed to help the young man in his quest to his mother all those years ago. Were he a normal sensei, he would have rewarded Minato with a new jutsu for getting promoted to Chunin. However, his idea of a reward was sending his student to a prostitute. He had expected the woman to provide him with positive feedback when he visited her later. Unfortunately, she revealed to him that Minato was the shittiest lay she's ever had, and that she would murder the blonde if she saw him again. Hearing that was like getting stabbed in the heart. How could he accept praise for teaching the Yellow Flash when the moniker should have been awarded to Minato for how quickly he was able to bust a nut? Naruto, on the other hand, was poles apart from his father. Jiraiya could tell that when the blonde came to him, explaining that he was willing to move mountains to reach his dream. The determination in those cerulean blue orbs made him backpedal in awe. It was at that moment he realized that this whiskered child was the child of prophecy. The student had long since surpassed the master. "Well, I'm off," announced Jiraiya, garnering the couple's attention. "I have to meet with a few publishers and flesh out some details for this new Make-Out Paradise book. I'll be back later." 5 seconds after the man vanished in a swirl of leaves, Naruto could be seen tugging on the waistband of his best friend's mother's tight leather pants. He pulled down them a little, just so her big, fat popped out. A few ripples ran through the plump cheeks as he shook them in his hands, dotting his lips. He unbuckled his pants and his tower of meat came charging out, giddy with the prospect of embracing some feminine walls. "You're insatiable, Koi," scolded the black-haired MILF. "Might I remind you that we had 4 rounds of this morning? We even had a quickie in the shower just 20 minutes ago." Naruto spanked the lady's bottom. "I want to enjoy some breakfast with my girlfriend on my lap, and with me inside her. Is that too much to ask?" Adorably shaking her head as to say, "What am I going to do with you?" Fugaku's wife stood between her mate's legs. She swayed her childbearing hips from side to side before pushing out her derriere, waiting for him to align himself with her. Instead of doing that, he placed his hands on her sides and used his upper body strength to hoist her in the air, making her squeak in surprise. She soon found herself bending over a chair as he parted her legs, spreading her butt cheeks. A tremor ran through her as he used 2 fingers to pry open the folds of her rosebud. Gathering as much saliva as he could, Naruto opened his mouth and allowed his spit to start seeping through his parted lips. The thick, natural lubricant oozed down and perfectly landed on the entrance of his godmother's anus before disappearing inside the dark pinkish hole. The saliva oozed down again, and again, and again, until he was certain his lover's was nice and lubricated. Sasuke's mother chewed on her bottom lip, debating whether or not she should clench her as hard as possible to avoid getting sodomized again. So lost in her thoughts, she didn't realize her lover was wedging his thick in the bridge between her bottom. She whimpered as he began driving his length to and fro. Her eardrums picked up on another unattractive gurgling sound, but since it didn't connect with her flesh, she realized he had spat on his as his way of lubricating it. She braced herself knowing what was to come, but not even her preparation helped for when her lover started tearing through her anal cavity. Her eyes welled with tears, her entire body juddering, her knees beginning to give in. She covered her mouth with her hands, screaming into her palms as the blonde rectally fed her his ungodly large. Her insides fluttered and quivered before locking down on him like a vice. In a matter of minutes her clenched buttocks clapped against his thighs as he was buried to the hilt, bottoming out inside her. Her teeth chattered as she let out a guttural cry. She slumped back against him when he wrapped his arms around her stomach, which she felt he was trying to drill into. Oh, babbled Sasuke's mother. You're still as tight as you were yesterday, Miko Haim, whispered Naruto fondly, his manhood devouring the delicious jelly of his lover's anal canal. I can't wait to take that doggy style tonight. After grazing her curvaceous frame with his fingers, he pulled her along with him as he lowered himself. As he sat back down on his chair, she landed on top of him and her scrumptious tush ballooned out on his thighs. Spreading his legs slightly, he yanked her down by the sides to give her cute little the stretching of a lifetime. She threw her head back, whimpering like an exhausted prostitute. Even though he had thoroughly exercised her in various positions last night, her sphincter walls were still clinging to him like an overprotective girlfriend. Makoto's kittenish mules filled the dining room as her son's best friend palmed both her s through her clothes. Her s hardened as his calloused fingers drew near, anxious for his tantric touch. She wiggled her childbearing hips, her anal walls collapsing around his length in submission. Sweet feminine cream started gathering at the entrance of her cunt and slowly oozed down her skin, oiling up her perineum. The wind was pushed out of her lungs as he took her erect in between 2 fingers, pinching it. His thumb quickly replaced his fingers, which he smoothly shoved up her tight little. Her onyx orbs darkened with lust, her brain cells scattering. Rocking his hips, the whiskered shinobi began hammering away at his godmother's anus, all while pressing down on her with his thumb and drilling his fingers in and out of her snatch. Turning his head, he started smooching the creamy skin of her neck, targeting one of her most prominent erogenous zones. She quickly tilted her head, raised his chin and slammed her lips against his. Powerful vibrations went tunneling down his throat as she howled pleasurably into his mouth. The spasms in her legs escalated several levels before she was forced to pull away from his lips to let out a deafening shriek. Sweet cream gushed from the depths of her vagina, drenching his fingers and their lower halves as the rest came squirting out. Deciding against unsheathing his from her, he withdrew his glistening fingers from her married warmth, causing whatever remained of her release to start dripping onto the floor. Groaned Naruto delightedly as he'd his fingers clean. Like always, she had brewed some delicious juices for him and he would be a fool to waste it. Why you are so naughty, making me cum so hard, panted Makoto with fluttering eyes and a hung jaw. Her massive tits bounced up and down as she took long, deep breaths. His lips curled into a foxy grin as he rocked his hips, spearing into the deepest reaches of his lover's butthole. She let out incoherent squeals while clenching her tush, almost snapping his in half due to how forcefully her walls were contracting. A chuckle escaped him when she recovered from the sudden thrust and shot him a glare which he found adorable. Lifting her chin, he pulled her in for a kiss, which she happily reciprocated. For the next 10 minutes they savored the comfortable silence. Now they were ready to eat. They quickly straightened themselves upon sensing a presence heading downstairs. Makoto fixed up her messy hair and wiped her sweaty face with a few napkins. Naruto did nothing since the session was too short for him to work up a sweat. "Hey, Dobi, Ka-san," said Sasuke as he entered the dining hall, unaware of what had just transpired between his mother and best friend. He couldn't see their lower halves because the tablecloth was so long that it was touching the floor. The aroma of the food was canceling out the musky smell of their recent lovemaking. "Good morning to you both. What's with all the grub?" The Uchiha dining hall table was like most tables, rectangular shaped. However, one side was carved into a V shape, and only the clan head was meant to sit in that end of the table. This was where Naruto was sitting, and this was where he has sat every day for the past 5 years. By making a cuckout of the head of the household, he claimed ownership of the compound and also became the unofficial clan head. Fugaku didn't dare question the blonde when he pulled up that chair the first time because it was his rightful place. "Morning, Tem," replied Naruto kindly. "Good morning, Sochi. All of this food was generously given to us by Jiraiya-san," answered the woman in a sweet, bubbly, motherly voice. "Please take a seat and help yourself." "Don't mind if I do, Ka-san," replied the teen before smirking over at his brother and father who had just made their presence known. "I call the onigiri. Fine by me, I get all the paki," announced Itachi as he plopped on a free chair. "Good morning, Ka-san, Naruto." Naruto nodded, this time silently returning the greeting. "Good morning, Sochi," chirruped Lady Uchiha. "I'm so thrilled to see you both in such a joyous mood." Fugaku chuckled while chewing on an almond. "That's because they've been enlightened to the truth and now understand what I've been trying to tell them for all these years." Both Uchiha teens blushed beet red, earning a laugh from Fugaku, his wife, and his master. They had spent the better half of last night masturbating to the memory of the adulterous coupling. It was as their father had revealed to them last night in secret. By watching their mother and her lover have their submissive male Uchiha genes fully awakened, thus allowing them to see how much pleasure they can receive from watching their loved one with a superior male. This was something Sasuke had been thinking about last night. He was wondering if he should accept a marriage proposal and get engaged, just so he could watch her another man. Saliva gathered at the corner of his mouth as he drooled from daydreaming about the Dobi being his fiancé. Itachi had a girlfriend, her name was Izumi Uchiha, but having with her did nothing for him. It wasn't that she was a poor layer, that she was unresponsive in bed. The problem has always been with him, and that was confirmed yesterday when his father revealed their clan's darkest secret. The thought of allowing her to spend the night with someone else did excite him. However, he wasn't sure if he could actually go through with it. "I will say that the show you had put on for us was just breathtaking," continued the eldest Uchiha. "I can't even begin to express the adrenaline I was feeling when you were taking Naruto Dono up the Makoto. It was a dream come true for me," said Naruto, his twitching inside his godmother's anus. "I am so lucky to have been blessed with such a giving lover." Makoto flushed as she worked the enormous length with her hiney. "You are such a dork, Narukoi," whispered the reddening woman. "Giving you my was the least I could do for all you've done for me these past 5 years. I've said this time and time again, you and I are soulmates. How can I refuse you?" The Uchiha men all directed warm smile at the happy couple. Despite being a devoted cuckold, Fugaku felt slightly jealous that his wife was staring at her lover with such adoration. He knew she would never look at him like that due to him wielding such a tiny. He had learned long ago that he wasn't man enough to handle a goddess like her. At the end of the day, it was all good because he got more thrill out of watching those two have than he got out of engaging in intercourse himself. Speaking of me having with Narukoi, we have to talk about boundaries, Fugaku, continued Makoto seriously, her attention now on her husband. I've never stopped you from watching us, but it has to stop here. 5 years of free live shows is long enough, don't you think? You're absolutely right, Makoto, said the Uchiha clan head. Not once did you refuse my request to watch you two fornicate. You even allowed me to videotape a few of your sessions, which I'll resort to watching from here on out in the comfort of my bedroom. Don't worry about me creating a fuss about this again. You have my word that I'll respect yours and Naruto Dono's privacy. Both Itachi and his younger sibling felt bad for the man, but they knew this was a long time coming. Their mother could have cut him off years ago if she really wanted to. On the other hand, they were incredibly excited to hear of the tapes their father had in his possession. They planned to ask him if they could allow them to make copies of the films. Sasuke had even concocted a plan to ask his sensei to give him a day off so he could jack off all day while blazing through every video of his mother getting ed by his best friend. Makoto beamed at her husband. Thank you, Fugaku, replied the kunoichi. And who knows, Narukoi and I might decide to record some of our future anal adventures. If that does happen, we'll gladly hand you a duplicate of the footage. Really? Asked the man with wide, hopeful eyes. His heart hammered frantically upon receiving a nod from both his wife and her lover. Thank you both, so very much. Snow Country has recently begun exporting their trademark high-definition cameras that are used to shoot the Princess Gale films, thought Itachi with a hungry look on his eyes. I should gift Ka-san with one of those cameras so that tape would be of the highest quality possible. Sasuke stared at the couple with big, puppy dog eyes, hoping that they would hurry up and film the tape. If it's anything like what he saw yesterday, he wasn't going to leave his room for days. Not a problem, Fugaku-san, said Naruto calmly, but with a hidden sternness to his tone as he furrowed his eyebrows. Just remember to stay true to your promise. The last thing I want to do is exert my authority over you, but I will not hesitate to do so should that opportunity present itself. A cold sweat broke out on Fugaku's forehead, chills running down his spine. Naruto was a kind and just, but he didn't stand disobedience. The father of two could never forget the torture he was put through for disobeying his master's orders. His submissive male Uchiha genes began acting up, urging him to get out of his chair, which he did. He proceeded to cast his face down on the ground in humility. I will never go back on my word, Naruto-sama, declared the Uchiha clan head, amending his honorific for the man his wife was cheating on him with. It's eerie how I want to join Two-san and bow at the Dobi's feet as well, thought Sasuke with his older brother unknowingly sharing his thoughts. Those submissive male Uchiha genes were no joking matter. My husband has learned his lesson from last time, Koi, whispered the black-haired kunoichi. Let's get back to our breakfast. We have a full day ahead of us. You're right, Mikohime, said Naruto, wrapping his arms around his godmother. Rise, Fugaku-san. I can see that you're telling the truth. Please take your seat so we can all have some breakfast. Fugaku thanked the blonde before sitting back down on his chair. The quintet silently began chowing down the delicious food, sharing whatever dish they found best with the other. A warmth filled the dining hall as they ate to their heart's content. Neither the brown-haired man nor his sons were aware that Naruto was balls deep inside Mikoto this entire time. XXX. I can't believe the Dobi has pushed forward his plans to today. I still think he gets enough from Ka-san. Language, foolish little brother. This is our mother you're talking about here, scolded Itachi as the two lightly sparred in their compound's training area. You know Naruto loves Ka-san and would do anything for her. However, he's also in love with Kushina Oba-san and has been planning to bed her ever since he was a child. Don't bring up stupid arguments, Sasuke. If Ka-san was able to find the heart to agree to share him, Why are you making such a big fuss? Sasuke chewed on his bottom lip. I just don't want to see her get hurt. Perish the thought, because Naruto Dono will never hurt Makoto, reassured Fugaku while adjusting the training weights on his legs. Your mother means the world to him. I think we've all seen how much he cares for her over the 5 years they've been together. He has promised us that he will never favor Kushina-san over Makoto. Never forget that Naruto Dono always keeps his promises. Sasuke took this time to process what he had been told. He knew everything his father was saying was true, but he just needed to be reassured a final time. All right, I won't bring up the topic again, voiced the youngest Uchiha, growing serious. I still think what we're about to do is going to backfire on us. The Dobi wants to steal his mother from his father, who is the Ing Hokage. Shouldn't we think this over? The three Uchiha men were outside in the training area because Naruto was ing Makoto inside the compound. When he accidentally dropped his Paki, Itachi dunked down to pick it up from under the table, only to see Naruto's all up inside his mother. Even if the couple were now going at it upstairs, Sasuke could still hear his mother's overwhelmingly loud screams while sitting in the downstairs lounge area. Fugaku had to resist the urge to climb up the stairs out of habit to watch the blonde pounding his wife like he's done for the past 5 years. Thankfully, the training area was soundproof so no sound would enter or exit the grounds. Have no fear, for the super pervert is here, announced Jiraiya as he arrived in a cloud of smoke, tapping his shoes in a memorable dance. Leave the matter of distracting Minato to me and Fugaku-san. Sasuke and Itachi, I need the both of you to listen carefully to my instructions. If all goes according to plan, Naruto will be back inside the hole he came out from by the end of the week. Sasuke and Itachi flushed a little at the way the sage had worded his statement, but found themselves nodding and awaiting his instructions. Fugaku grinned at his sons and paid close attention to what the hermit was about to reveal. XXX. I hate that blonde bastard, grumbled Kushina under her breath, closing the door behind her. She had left to request a meeting with her husband to see if he wanted to have lunch with her. After waiting for 20 minutes, what she got was to learn was that Hokage-sama wasn't available because he had some important meeting with his old teacher and Fugaku. In complete outrage, she threw on her kunoichi gear and spent a solid 2 hours taking her anger out on the trees in Training Ground Zero. Whispered Kushina as her sensory abilities picked up on two presences sitting on her living room sofa. Sochi-kun is back, and, is that Makoto-chan with him? Normally, she would have announced her presence as loudly as she could because it was how she greeted her best friend. She chose to forego the tradition this time because she just wasn't in the mood to put on a fake act. She took a few steps forward, only to stop dead in her tracks. Makoto was sitting on Naruto's lap, resting her back against his chest. Her son's arms were wrapped around his godmother's waist, his fingers gently caressing her stomach. A girlish giggle here and a masculine laugh there. Snuggling was one thing, but Kushina could have sworn she saw her best friend grinding her hips against her son's crotch. Anger coursed through Kushina as Makoto got to her feet, shook her round dangerously close to Naruto's face before taking a seat back on his lap. What the was her friend doing? Such behavior was highly inappropriate for a woman who she had named her son's godmother. The gears inside her head started to turn as she thought things over from a different angle. It was one thing for Makoto to do this, but she had expected her son to push the woman away or at least mention that what she was doing was wrong. With how comfortable the two looked, she was able to understand that such intimate acts were common between them. When did it start? Why was she finding out about this now? But what came next almost forced a shriek out of her. Naruto brought Makoto around, allowing her to straddle his lap while facing him. His hands were now full of her, his fingertips applying pressure when necessary. The big, fat flesh of her bottom easily sank against his warm palms. Then their foreheads touched, their lips brushing ever so slightly, their mouths opening and meeting in perfect harmony. Kushina wanted to shout, wanted to knock some sense into them, but she was unable to speak, unable to move. All she could do was watch as her son felt up and groped his godmother. All she could do was hear her friend's s. How could you do this to me, Makoto? How could you do this to your best friend? Thought Kushina with a heavy heart, for the first time foregoing an honorific for the Uchiha matriarch. And you, she couldn't even call him, Sochi-kun, right now. You're kissing a woman who is as old as your mother. To make matters worse, the woman you're kissing is your godmother. The both of you have broken my heart. I cannot believe this is really happening. No matter how horrified she was with the events transpiring, she was unfortunately so lonely that she couldn't look away from the couple. Naruto caressed, kneaded, showered his godmother's scrumptious bottom with all the love he could channel into his fingers. They were now indulging in a deeper, more intimate kiss. His tongue trashed around from top to bottom, ing her inner cheeks and teeth before drawing in her lower lip. She panted into his mouth, her fingernails digging into the forest of his golden locks. While doing so, she was sensually grinding her hips on his crotch as though she was attempting to awaken the one-eyed beast that was held captive within his trousers. There was a powerful UAL tension in the living room as the two made out. Minato's wife sensed a flare from their chakra networks as they explored each other's mouths. She felt incredibly ashamed of herself when thick, rich juice oozed from her saturated labia lips and started trailing down the sides of her legs. Deciding to divert her thoughts, she tried recalling when she was kissed so passionately. Not a gentle peck on the lips, but an intricate dance of the tongue. Minato fell incredibly short in that regard, that was for sure. Have you ever wondered what it would feel like to get stretched by a huge? I'm not talking about our pencil husbands here. I'm talking about getting ed by a man with a really, really huge, so huge that you find yourself closing your legs out of fear, so huge that you feel like sealing your shut before he can get to you. BBB Baka. Don't say such nasty things, Databane. Violet orbs narrowed as she ran over the conversation she had with her best friend several years ago. Back then, she had written off Makoto's occasional perverted outbursts as her way of teasing her. It was becoming clear that the woman must have been talking about Naruto's monster. Oh Kami-sama, did you see Naruto-kun training out there with his shirt off? Your son is a ing stud, Kushina. What the actual, Makoto? Feminine hands curled, forming into clenched fists as she stared at the two swapping saliva like two horny teenagers. Good morning, Makoto Oba-san. I wish I could say the same, Naruto-kun. Do I have to grab your face and kiss you to get you to stop calling me that? Makoto Baka. Stop teasing Sochi-kun, Databane. Her eyes widened to the size of dinner plates when she realized how oblivious she had been. She was aware of how overly affectionate Makoto with Naruto, but never had she considered the possibility the two were seeing other right under her nose. Fugaku. The hell with him. I'd rather go with Naruto-kun. Stop kidding around, Makoto-chan. This is a couple's dinner. What's your point? Oh, how foolish she had been. The signs were there, but she had missed every single one of them. All those times her son would sneak out in the middle of the night and wouldn't return until late morning. All those girl talk meetups Makoto had rescheduled because she was busy. All those times she caught the two of them together in a cafe or strolling the village streets. The pieces of the puzzle finally fell together as the fog started to clear. Oh my Kami, mumbled Kushina as her son peeled his trousers down. For the second time, Minato's wife beheld the which should not belong on a man. She stared fearfully as she measured the length with her fluttering eyes. When she had accidentally walked in on him changing, she wasn't given the chance to stare as long as she was doing now. How was her son able to walk with such an intimidating beast dangling between his legs? Her husband truly was insignificant when compared to their son. Kushina absently dropped the anger she was feeling towards Makoto. Now she was fearing for the woman's safety. There was no way her friend could take all of that inside her. It should be medically impossible for a vagina to expand so much. As ashamed as she was, she couldn't deny that her son could break any woman's mind, body and soul with his gigantic strip for me, Miko Heim. Kushina heard her son order her best friend. She was shocked to see how dominant and assertive he sounded. Anything for my Naru Koi. Again, Kushina was shocked, but this time to hear how submissive her best friend sounded just now. Wait, Naru Koi, Miko Heim, thought the Uzumaki woman while shaking her head out of frustration and hurt. She was brought out of her thoughts when her best friend hopped off the sofa. Sasuke's mother placed her hands on her hips, revolving them slowly. Pushing her pert rear out, accentuating the perfectly symmetrical spheres, she began moving her hips sensuously, shaking her bottom while bringing her hands above her waist. Her hands landed on her chest, running over her tits, even squeezing them slightly. She let out an exaggerated erotic sigh, after which she dropped her hands to her waist again. Kushina was taken back when she saw the look of pure lust twinkling in her best friend's eyes. Pushing her hands forward, the Uchiha matriarch tugged on her waistband and very slowly, very idly peeled down her pants. Her big, fat, juicy ballooned out as she did so. Her hands held up the waistband of her pants to prevent her pants from slithering down her legs since they were dangling around her thighs. Naruto kissed the woman's butt cheeks and caressed them, shook them, bounced them. Kushina just stared at the two with growing despair and arousal. Naruto's hands fanned out atop of the scrumptious derriere laid out before him. A melodious giggle rang from Fugaku's wife's mouth as her lover pressed his face against her right cheek and gently nipped at her doughy flesh. Kushina couldn't help but feel jealous from watching her friend get her worship ed. After this, Makoto yanked her pants back up again. She took one step forward before bending over, resting her hands on the living room table and elevating hair as high as she could. She wiggled her bubble butt, squealing when he playfully spanked her. Although she wasn't a lesbian, Minato's wife was quite envious of how her friend looked while dancing for her son. If Makoto hadn't made her living as a ninja, she would have made a killing as a stripper. There was something erotic about a woman who had thick pair of thighs and motherly hips. Meanwhile, Makoto reached for the hem of her shirt and sensually undressed herself. The tight-fitting pants came off just as quick, but it was all done with such grace that it left the redhead speechless and a little wet. It awed her to see Makoto garbed in black lace, though the woman's huge s were practically busting out of the bra she had on. So much cleavage was being shown that it made her feel a little uncomfortable. Even from her location, Kushina could see that Makoto's s were so erect that they were trying to poke a hole through her brassiere. She lowered her gaze to see a garter belt worn snug around the blacket's slender waist. 6 fluffy straps were tied to the belt, connecting to an amazing pair of nylon thigh-high stockings. A very fancy-looking pair of black and white panties covered up her crotch, completing the mistress look. She looks so elegant, wow. Makoto sat back on Naruto's lap, this time her glorious, juicy, bubble butt ballooned out on his thighs as her lace panties stretched to adjust to the change of positioning. Kushina's jaw dropped slightly when her son pulled down his godmother's panties from the back, revealing the woman's deep crack. His hands caressed both mystical spheres, patting them lightly before kneading them like dough. Kushina squeezed her thighs together as her son dug his hand in between her friend's crevice. He was moving his hand to and fro, exploring the space. Makoto's s were like an aphrodisiac to her because it was confirming that her son knew his way around that feminine block. Their lips connected again, and Minato's wife found herself reaching for her. It wasn't fair. It wasn't fair that she was spending years alone in the bedroom while her best friend was shacking it up with her precious son. It wasn't fair that Makoto was cheating on her husband. It wasn't fair that she was lusting over her son and wishing he was kissing her instead of his godmother. Curse Minato for abandoning his duties as a husband. Had he paid attention to her, she wouldn't be on board this emotional roller coaster right now. Naruto suddenly grabbed hold of his humongous and then wedged it in between the spheres of his girlfriend's magnificent Kushina threw a hand over her mouth, her violet eyes bulging when she saw the blonde's angry mushroom head was resting near the center of Makoto's back. He will break her, thought Kushina with fear enveloping her. There's no way in hell she can handle Sochi-kun. The couple were now whispering and Kushina had a hard time listening to them from where she stood. Channeling chakra to her ears, she eavesdropped on their conversation. Could you bring that can of whipped cream from the fridge, Miko Heim? Sure, honey. Kushina stood bewildered as her friend vanished into thin air before reappearing with a tall cylindrical can of whipped cream in hand. She was unsure why her son had requested something like this, but she had a feeling she would be finding out soon. Holding her hindquarters propped up, her knees planted on the carpet and slightly parted, Makoto extended her arms forward and arched her spine, leaning her upper body down slowly, until her huge tits were squashed underneath her frame and her bubble butt protruded out, its fullness accentuated to the extreme. Feeling her self-confidence taking a plunge, Kushina twisted her body to see how her derriere compared to her best friend's. By the time she turned her attention back to the couple, she saw her son sinking to his knees. The Uzumaki matriarch's eyes grew wide as whipped cream came spraying out of the can, filling the canyon between her friend's butt with delicious foam. Time stood still for her as her offspring propelled forward, digging his face deep in his godmother's rump. Loud slurping noises filled the living room as he inhaled the dessert like it was the only thing on the menu. She chewed on her bottom lip, her hands trembling. Thick nectar started oozing out of her cunt, sticking against her inner thighs, making it uncomfortable for her to fidget. Why was her husband such a timid snowflake? Minato refused to experiment with new positions because he was probably the world's biggest fan of the missionary position. Oh, yes. The dreaded spreading of the legs and waiting a brief minute for the Hokage to huff and puff before releasing an unimpressive load. Unfortunately, years have gone by since the last time she was taken in his one position because of his constant absence from home. But the likelihood of him using whipped cream in their UAL escapades? Absolute zero. The next 10 minutes blurred away as Naruto consumed his dessert. He rimmed out the Uchiha matriarch's anus, bathing her in with his saliva, eating her out from the back like a starved animal. Her tender walls collapsed around him, but he was able to subdue her defense mechanisms by channeling chakra to his tongue. Unable to handle any more, Makoto cried to the heavens as she fell forward, squirting all over the floor. The spasms in her legs were so dramatic that it was causing her to flop around like an out-of-water fish. A smirk curled to the whiskered ninja's lips when he heard a gasp from afar. Burying his face in her derriere, he ran his tongue to his heart's content. It took a moment for his lover to return to the realm of the living. Amazing as always, Koi, complimented Makoto breathlessly, struggling to stand upright. But now it's time for my lunch. Just give me a minute to rinse my eye feel sticky and icky from that whipped cream. Take your time, Heim, was all Naruto said as he took off his drenched shirt before reaching for the pants he threw away earlier. Grabbing his clothes along with his lover's, he sent a shadow clone upstairs with the garments in hand so they could get to it later. Incestuous heat coursed through her veins like a drug injecting into her bloodstream. Sweat beaded on her forehead, dripping down her chin, vanishing into the valley of her S until she felt the perspiration under her arms, soaking darkly into her clothes. Kushina's chest heaved painfully, her breathing ragged, her body tingling as she ran her glossed violet orbs up and down her son's monster. Years of pent-up lust were concentrating into a single desire to wrap her hands around that cervix killer. The artful cunnilingus shook her to her very core. The best oral service her husband had given her was a few quick swipes of his tongue because that's all his little wiener could take. This was the sort of worship she's been missing out on. Her son was like a eating wizard. It was hard to push back these desires, especially since the blonde was moving around and his humongous was swinging around violently, whacking from side to side against his muscular thighs. She was spellbound by the precum she saw oozing from his urethra, not to mention the sheer length and thickness of his shaft. Her legs started to shake, her hazy mind begging her to get off hair and go and taste her son like a doting mother. She shuddered at the vivid images her brain was conjuring for her. His mother was hiding behind a pillar watching them. She was using a henge to camouflage herself, but he could see right through the jutsu. For this seduction to work, he would have to prove to her that his father wasn't man enough to handle her. Not only that, but he would have to show her that he was the only man on this planet who could satisfy her every need. This seduction has been going on for a little over 6 years now. Thanks to Jiraiya falsifying a prophecy by the great elder Toad, Minato was convinced to spend all his time in the office and not think about home. Due to this, Kushina was more or less abandoned by her spouse, and the only man she could depend on was her son. Whenever there was a leak, or something was broken, Naruto never hesitated to take care of things. He even took charge of the kitchen and began cooking all of their food. By doing this, he invoked an evolution in the relationship he had with his mother. The result was her starting to depend on him more than she depended on her husband. The next step was persuading her see him as a potential mate. This was done by concocting the plan to have her see him. Not wanting to rush things was good, but he realized last night that by her masturbating while screaming his name, that the next step to seducing her would have to be executed as swiftly as possible. Slow and steady can win the race, but he ultimately ran with the most risk, most reward option, which was making her watch him have the living shit out of her best friend. Tapping noises filled the living room as a catwalking, stiletto-wearing Makoto returned from the bathroom. It took little time for her to wash away any last remains of the whipped cream from hair and inner thighs. Her ninja senses flared as she caught Kushina's location and resisted the urge to yell at her to stop peeping on her and her lover, just to scare the shit out of her. She would be lying if she said she was comfortable with having in front of her best friend. But thinking it over, she realized that this voyeurism approach could help motivate her to pleasure Naruto better. It did make sense because whenever her husband was watching her and Naruto she would have stronger orgasms than she would have had he been absent. That didn't go to say she didn't squirt like a whore when she and the blonde would kick Fugaku, Itachi and Sasuke out of the Uchiha compound so the two of them could have their weekend-long sessions. Speaking of Kushina, she let out a relieved sigh as she watched her best friend sashay towards her son with a hypnotizing sway in her childbearing hips. Thanked Kami. For a second there I thought Makoto-chan had caught me. Sinking into a squat, the black-haired MILF stared longingly at her son's best friend. So, Naru-koi, about my lunch. Right, said Naruto, grabbing the base of his humongous shaft and then slapping Sasuke's mother's forehead with the tip, creating a small thud sound. Enjoy, Mikoheim. Itadakimasu, murmured the flushed kunoichi while snatching her lovers away from his grasp like a bully stealing candy from a baby. Both her hands cupped the sides of his thickness, her thumbs pressing down to hold it upright. She ran her tongue from the base to the underside of the tip, all while cooing idly. When it was all nice and shiny with her saliva, she started jacking him off, each stroke displaying her years of experience. Soon enough, she let go of her hands, wrapped her arms around his waist and took him into the depths of her inviting mouth. Dribbles of spit and pre-cum drooled from the corners of Makoto's luscious lips as she ed the blonde off. Her throat constricted his shaft, her on fire, her head spinning from the sweetly perverse pleasure of servicing her best friend's son while the redhead stood there, unable to budge an inch from her hiding spot. This endless desire was enhanced by the inexplicable, visceral conviction that what they were doing was right. The Hokage's wife needed to wake up and smell the roses. Or in this case, she needed to cheat on her husband by hopping their son's monster. Opening her mouth as wide as she could, Kushina measured the diameter with her finger. This was all the proof she needed, this wasn't a one-time thing. If she couldn't get Mo